Zara's blue fingers trembled as she held the small vial up to the artificial light of her cramped laboratory. The liquid inside glowed with an eerie green phosphorescence that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. She had stolen this sample from the human military compound 3 days ago during the confusion of the border skirmish between Earth forces and her people, the Catherians. The war had been raging for 2 years now, ever since first contact went horribly wrong. What should have been a peaceful meeting between two species had turned into bloodshed when fear and misunderstanding led to violence. Now, the Catheriari Empire and the Human Colonial Alliance were locked in a bitter conflict across 17 star systems. Zara wasn't a soldier. She was a xenobiologist, one of the few Catherians who had dedicated her life to studying other species rather than conquering them. Her violet eyes, large and luminous like all of her kind, reflected her curiosity about the universe. Unlike most Catherians, who stood nearly 8 feet tall with their elongated limbs and pale blue skin, Zara was considered small at just over 6 feet. Her colleagues often mocked her for her fascination with alien life forms, calling her weak and unfit for their warrior culture. The serum in her hands represented something unprecedented. Human military enhancement drugs were legendary among the Catheriari intelligence network. Stories spoke of human soldiers performing impossible feats of strength, speed, and endurance after taking these chemical cocktails. Some reports claimed humans could fight for days without rest, lift objects 10 times their weight, and heal from wounds that would kill any other species. Zara's people had been trying to reverse engineer human enhancement technology for months, but every attempt had failed. The human body chemistry was so different from Catheriari physiology that their scientists couldn't understand how the serums worked. Most importantly, every test on Catheriari subjects had resulted in death within hours. But Zara had a theory. She believed the problem wasn't the serum itself, but how her people were trying to use it. They were attempting to force Catheriari biology to work like human biology, which was impossible. Instead, she thought the serum might interact with Catheriari DNA in entirely unexpected ways, creating something new rather than copying human abilities. Her laboratory was hidden in the lower levels of a research station on the edge of Catheriari space. Officially, she was working on developing biological weapons against human forces. In reality, she was conducting unauthorized experiments on cross-species compatibility. If her superiors discovered what she was really doing, she would face execution for treason. The stolen serum came from a human super soldier program called Project Apex. According to the intelligence reports, this particular formula was designed to enhance every aspect of human physical performance, while also sharpening mental acuity and reflexes. It was considered the pinnacle of human military science, given only to their most elite special forces units. Zara had spent weeks analyzing the serum's composition. The base was a complex protein matrix that seemed designed to interface directly with human neural tissue. Embedded within were nanotechnology components so advanced that even Catheriari science couldn't fully understand their function. Most intriguingly, the serum contained what appeared to be artificially created genetic sequences that didn't match any known Earth life forms. Her computer models suggested that if a Catheriari consumed the serum, the results would be catastrophic but brief. The incompatible chemistry would cause massive organ failure within 6 hours. However, Zara's models also showed a tiny window of possibility. In the first 30 minutes after consumption, there was a chance that the serum's nanotechnology might successfully interface with Catheriari neural pathways before the biological incompatibilities became fatal. It was a desperate gamble with almost certain death as the outcome. But Zara was desperate. 3 days ago, she had received word that her younger brother Kale had been captured during a failed raid on a human colony. He was being held in a maximum security prison facility that was considered impregnable. The Catheriari military command had declared him expendable and refused to mount a rescue mission. Kyle was the only family Zara had left. Their parents had died in the early days of the war, victims of a human bombing raid on their home city. Kyle had joined the military seeking revenge, but he was young and inexperienced. Zara couldn't abandon him to die in human captivity. Her plan was insane. If the serum didn't kill her outright, she intended to use whatever abilities it might grant her to infiltrate the human prison and rescue her brother. She knew it was probably suicide, but doing nothing was certainly death for Kale. Zara looked around her laboratory one last time. Banks of quantum computers hummed quietly, processing endless streams of biological data. Specimen containers lined the walls, holding samples from dozens of alien species she had studied over the years. This room had been her sanctuary, the place where she had made discoveries that could have benefited both humans and Catharians if only the war would end. She pulled up a holographic display showing the human prison facility where Kyle was being held. The structure was a fortress built into an asteroid, surrounded by defensive platforms and patrol ships. It housed the most dangerous prisoners from across human space, with security systems designed by the finest military engineers Earth had to offer. The facility had never been successfully breached by any outside force, but it had been designed to keep out conventional attacks. No one had planned for whatever Zara might become after drinking the human serum. She activated her computer's recording system and began to speak. Personal log, Dr. Zara Velthanis, date cycle 2847.3. I am about to attempt something that has never been tried before. If I die, let this record show that I acted not out of hatred for humanity, but out of love for my brother. The war between our species has brought nothing but pain and death. Perhaps understanding each other's biology is a step toward understanding each other. Zara paused, her hand shaking slightly. If by some miracle I survive this experiment, I hope to use whatever abilities I gain to save Kale and potentially find a way to end this conflict. Both humans and Catharians have suffered enough. She turned off the recording and sat in silence for several minutes, gathering her courage. Through the laboratory's small viewport, she could see the stars that separated her from her brother. Somewhere among those distant lights, Kale was probably wondering if anyone would come for him. The serum felt warm in her hand, as if it were alive. The green glow seemed brighter now, pulsing in rhythm with her dual hearts. Cathariari physiology included redundant cardiovascular systems, which might actually help her survive the serum's effects longer than her computer models predicted. Zara thought about her brother's face the last time she had seen him. He had been so young, barely past his first century of life, filled with anger and determination to strike back at the humans who had killed their parents. She had tried to talk him out of joining the military, but he wouldn't listen. Now he was paying the price for the hatred that consumed both their species. She pulled the cork from the vial and held it to her nose. The serum had no scent that her sensitive Cathariari olfactory system could detect, which was unusual. Most chemical compounds produced some kind of smell, but this substance seemed to exist in a state that bypassed normal sensory detection. "For you, Kyle," she whispered, and drank the entire contents of the vial in one gulp. The taste was indescribable. It wasn't pleasant or unpleasant, but rather felt like tasting pure energy. The liquid seemed to dissolve on her tongue before she could even swallow, racing into her system with impossible speed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the pain began. It started as a warm tingling in her stomach that quickly spread throughout her body. Within seconds, every nerve ending was on fire. Zara collapsed to the floor, her muscles spasming uncontrollably as the serum raced through her bloodstream. Her vision blurred, colors shifting and changing as her optical nerves were overwhelmed by sensory input. She could feel the serum's nanotechnology spreading through her nervous system, making connections that had never existed before. Her brain felt like it was being rewired at the cellular level. New neural pathways opened while others were enhanced beyond anything her species had ever experienced. The agony was beyond description. It felt like every cell in her body was being taken apart and rebuilt simultaneously. Her dual hearts hammered in her chest as they tried to cope with the foreign substances flooding her system. Her naturally pale blue skin began to shift color, taking on an almost silvery hue as the serum integrated with her physiology. Through the pain, Zara could sense something extraordinary happening. Her consciousness was expanding, awareness spreading beyond the normal limits of Ketheriari perception. She could feel the electromagnetic fields generated by every piece of equipment in her laboratory. The quantum computer's processing patterns became visible to her in ways that defied explanation. Most remarkably, she began to sense the thoughts and emotions of other beings throughout the research station. The human enhancement serum was somehow awakening psychic abilities that no Ketheriari had ever possessed. She could feel the minds of her colleagues working in laboratories above her, their thoughts and feelings as clear as if they were speaking aloud. The transformation continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Gradually, the pain began to subside, replaced by a feeling of incredible energy and vitality. Zara's breathing steadied, and her hearts found a new rhythm that felt stronger and more efficient than before. When she finally opened her eyes and looked at herself, she gasped in amazement. Her reflection in the laboratory's polished surfaces showed someone who was recognizably her, but changed in fundamental ways. Her skin had taken on a metallic sheen that seemed to shift between blue and silver depending on the light. Her eyes now glowed with the same green phosphorescence as the serum had contained. But the physical changes were nothing compared to what she could feel happening inside her mind. Information flowed through her consciousness at speeds that should have been impossible to process. She understood the quantum computer systems around her at an intuitive level, seeing their operations as clearly as reading simple text. More importantly, she could sense life forms throughout the research station and even on nearby ships. Each mind felt different, like a unique signature that she could identify and track. The ability seemed to have unlimited range, limited only by her concentration and focus. Zara stood up, marveling at how different her body felt. She was stronger, faster, and more coordinated than ever before. When she reached for a tool on her workbench, her hand moved with precision that surprised her. The serum hadn't just enhanced her physical abilities, it had fundamentally improved the connection between her mind and body. She activated her computers and began running diagnostics on herself. The results were staggering. Her neural activity was operating at levels that should have been fatal, but instead of causing damage, the enhanced brain function was perfectly stable. Her cellular regeneration had increased dramatically, meaning she could heal from injuries at an accelerated rate. Most importantly, the serum hadn't rejected her Ketheriari biology as everyone had predicted. Instead, it had found ways to work with her species' unique physiology, creating combinations of abilities that neither humans nor Ketherians possessed individually. As the full scope of her transformation became clear, Zara realized she had become something entirely new. She wasn't human, and she was no longer exactly Ketheriari either. The serum had created a bridge between the two species, combining their strengths in ways that neither side had imagined possible. Now she had the power to rescue her brother. But more than that, she might have discovered the key to ending the war itself. If she could show both sides that cooperation was possible, that their differences could be strengths rather than sources of conflict, perhaps the killing could finally stop. But first, she had to survive long enough to put her new abilities to the test, and that meant infiltrating the most secure prison facility in human space, guarded by soldiers who would shoot her on sight simply for being Ketheriari. Zara smiled, feeling energy coursing through her transformed body. For the first time since the war began, she felt hope. Whatever she had become, she was ready to change the course of history itself. The human prison facility designated Tartarus Base hung in space like a steel tumor attached to the asteroid designated LX-7749. Zara's stolen Ketheriari scout ship drifted silently among the debris field that surrounded the prison, her new abilities allowing her to mask the vessel's energy signature in ways that should have been impossible. 2 days had passed since her transformation, and she was still discovering the extent of her enhanced capabilities. The human military serum had not only granted her incredible physical abilities, but had awakened something far more extraordinary. She could manipulate electromagnetic fields with her mind, essentially becoming invisible to most scanning equipment. More importantly, she had discovered she could sense and influence the thoughts of others at close range. Through her enhanced perception, she could feel the minds of the hundreds of guards stationed throughout Tartarus Base. Their thoughts were clear to her now, a constant stream of boredom, duty, and underlying fear. These humans knew they were guarding some of the most dangerous prisoners in the galaxy, including several high-ranking Ketheriari officers captured during recent battles. Finding Kyle among the prison population had been easier than expected. His mind blazed with familiar defiance and barely controlled rage, emotions she recognized from their childhood. He was being held in the maximum security section, 3 levels below the main prison complex. The humans had classified him as extremely dangerous despite his young age, probably due to the destruction his unit had caused before their capture. Zara's approach to the prison had taken 36 hours of careful maneuvering through the asteroid field. Her enhanced reflexes and improved spatial awareness allowed her to pilot the scout ship through debris that would have destroyed any normal vessel. The humans had seeded the area with automated sensors, but her electromagnetic manipulation abilities let her create false readings that made her ship appear to be nothing more than a drifting piece of wreckage. Now came the difficult part. Actually getting inside the fortress would require her to abandon the safety of her ship and somehow breach defenses that had never been successfully penetrated. The prison's outer hull was lined with quantum-locked armor plating that could withstand direct hits from battleship weapons. Guard towers bristled with automated defense systems programmed to destroy any unauthorized approaching vessels. But Zara had advantages that no previous attacker had possessed. Her transformation had granted her the ability to survive in vacuum for extended periods, her enhanced metabolism allowing her to function with minimal oxygen for up to an hour. More importantly, her electromagnetic manipulation abilities meant she could potentially interfere with the prison's electronic systems in ways its designers had never anticipated. She secured her scout ship to a large piece of debris about 2 kilometers from the prison's outer perimeter. The camouflaged vessel would wait here for her return, its automated systems programmed to maintain position until she came back. If she didn't return within 72 hours, the ship would automatically pilot itself back to Ketheriari space with a complete record of her infiltration attempt. Zara sealed herself into a lightweight environmental suit designed for extended space operations. The suit's systems were basic, providing minimal life support and protection from radiation. She had modified it extensively, stripping out unnecessary components to reduce its electromagnetic signature and installing experimental devices of her own design. The most important modification was a network of bioresponsive conductors woven throughout the suit's fabric. These would amplify her newfound electromagnetic abilities, allowing her to project her influence across much greater distances. In theory, she could use the enhanced suit to override electronic systems throughout the prison complex. Before leaving her ship, Zara activated a long-range communication array and sent a coded message toward Ketheriari space. The transmission was disguised as background radiation, but intelligence analysts would eventually decode its meaning. She wanted her people to know what had happened to her, regardless of whether she survived the rescue attempt. The message was simple. Successful biological integration of human enhancement technology achieved. New capabilities beyond original projections. Proceeding with field test. Recommend immediate research into peaceful applications. She sealed the message with her personal identification codes and launched it into the void, then turned her attention to the prison fortress ahead. Through her enhanced vision, she could see the thermal signatures of guard patrols moving along the outer hull. Security was tight, with overlapping fields of sensor coverage that would detect any conventional approach. Zara pushed off from her concealed ship and began drifting toward Tartarus Base, using only tiny bursts from her suit's maneuvering thrusters to correct her trajectory. To any observers, she would appear to be another piece of debris floating through the field. Her enhanced mental abilities allowed her to track the movement patterns of every sensor array and automated defense system, timing her approach to slip through momentary gaps in coverage. The journey across open space took nearly 4 hours. Zara moved in slow, careful stages, pausing frequently to drift motionless when patrols passed nearby. Her transformed physiology allowed her to remain perfectly still for extended periods, her enhanced muscle control eliminating even the tiny movements that might betray her presence to sensitive motion detectors. As she drew closer to the prison, her telepathic abilities began picking up more detailed thoughts from the guards inside. Most were standard military personnel, professional soldiers doing their duty without enthusiasm. But she also sensed several individuals whose minds felt different, colder, and more focused. These were likely special operations troops, the kind of elite soldiers who would respond immediately to any security breach. The prison's outer hull loomed ahead of her, a wall of armored metal studded with sensor nodes and weapon emplacements. Zara had studied the facility's blueprints extensively, identifying several potential entry points where maintenance access ports might be vulnerable to infiltration. Her target was a thermal exhaust vent located in a section of the hull that was poorly covered by security cameras. Reaching the hull surface without triggering alarms required precise timing. Zara waited until a routine patrol had passed, then used her electromagnetic abilities to temporarily disrupt the nearest sensor cluster. The disruption would appear to be routine equipment failure, giving her a window of several minutes to reach the access port. She landed softly against the prison's hull, magnetic clamps in her boots anchoring her to the metal surface. The thermal exhaust vent was exactly where the blueprints had indicated, a circular opening about 2 meters in diameter, covered by a heavy grating. The grating was secured by quantum locks that would be impossible to break with conventional tools. But Zara's electromagnetic abilities weren't conventional. She placed her hands against the locking mechanism and extended her enhanced senses into the device's electronic systems. The quantum locks operated by maintaining specific electromagnetic frequencies that would destabilize if disrupted. Carefully, she began introducing harmonic interference into the system. The locks disengaged silently, the grating swinging open on well-oiled hinges. Zara slipped inside the thermal exhaust shaft, pulling the grating closed behind her. She was now inside the prison's outer defenses, but the most dangerous part of her mission lay ahead. The exhaust shaft led deep into the prison's interior, eventually connecting to the main atmospheric processing system. Zara crawled through the narrow tunnel for what felt like hours, following her memorized route toward the maximum security section. The shaft was barely wide enough for her enhanced frame, and the metal walls conducted heat from the prison's environmental systems. Along the way, she passed several branching tunnels that led to other areas of the facility. Through these openings, she could hear the sounds of prison life. Guards talking, doors sliding open and closed, and occasionally the voices of prisoners calling to each other through cell walls. The acoustics of the ventilation system carried sound from throughout the complex, giving her an audio map of the facility's current activity levels. Her telepathic abilities grew stronger as she moved deeper into the prison. She could now sense individual minds with remarkable clarity, reading surface thoughts and emotions as easily as watching facial expressions. The guards were professional, but not particularly alert, the routine of their duties having dulled their vigilance over time. More concerning were the prisoners she could detect. Many were hardened criminals and war veterans, their minds filled with violence and desperation. Some had been imprisoned for years and had developed an almost animal cunning, constantly searching for any opportunity to escape or harm their captors. A few showed signs of psychological instability that made them genuinely dangerous, even while locked in maximum security cells. Kyle's presence grew stronger as she approached the high-security section. His mind was different from the other prisoners, burning with focused determination rather than the chaotic desperation of long-term inmates. He was planning something, she realized, though she couldn't yet determine what. The ventilation shaft finally brought her to an access point directly above the maximum security cell block. Through a metal grate, she could see a long corridor lined with reinforced doors. Each cell was equipped with multiple security systems, including force field generators that could contain even the strongest prisoners. Guard stations were positioned at both ends of the corridor, with additional security checkpoints controlling access to this section. Zara counted 12 guards in the immediate area, all wearing full combat armor and carrying weapons designed to stop anything from enhanced humans to cybernetic assassins. They weren't taking any chances with the high-value prisoners in this section. Finding Kale's specific cell required extending her telepathic senses through the metal walls and electronic barriers. She searched through the imprisoned minds, looking for the familiar pattern of her brother's thoughts. Most of the prisoners were asleep or lost in hopeless fantasies of escape, but a few were actively planning ways to exploit any security weakness. There. Cell designation SB7, 3 doors down from her current position. Kyle was awake, his mind racing as he worked on what appeared to be a complex escape plan. He had somehow obtained detailed information about the prison's security schedules and was waiting for an optimal moment to attempt a breakout. Zara realized that her brother's planned escape could provide the perfect distraction for her own infiltration. If she could coordinate her efforts with his, they might both have a better chance of reaching freedom. But first, she needed to make contact without alerting the guards to her presence. Carefully, she extended her enhanced telepathic abilities toward Kale's cell, trying to establish a mental connection without triggering the prison's psionic detection systems. The facility was equipped with sensors designed to prevent telepathic communication between prisoners, but Zara's abilities were unlike anything the designers had anticipated. The first contact was tentative, like brushing against another mind in the darkness. Kale's thoughts suddenly sharpened with alarm as he sensed an unfamiliar presence in his head. His military training made him naturally resistant to mental intrusion, but Zara projected feelings of familiarity and safety, emotions associated with childhood memories they shared. Recognition flowed through the mental link like warm light. Kale's amazement and joy at realizing his sister had somehow found him was overwhelming. But he quickly suppressed these emotions to avoid alerting any monitoring systems. His thoughts formed words that reached her clearly. "Zara, how is this possible? You need to get away from here before they detect you." She projected reassurance and determination back to him, along with a brief explanation of her transformation and current abilities. Kale's mind reeled as he processed the information about the human military serum and her enhanced capabilities. His tactical training immediately began analyzing how her new abilities might be used to facilitate an escape. "The guard rotation changes in 47 minutes, his thoughts informed her. "During the shift change, there's a 6-minute window when only automated systems monitor this corridor. If you can disable those systems, I can break out of my cell using materials I've been collecting, but we'll only have minutes before backup arrives." Zara studied the security systems through her electromagnetic senses, mapping the complex network of sensors, alarms, and automated weapons that protected the cell block. Disabling everything simultaneously would require precise timing and more power than she had ever attempted to channel before. The risk of overloading her enhanced nervous system was significant, but it might be their only chance. She spent the remaining time until the guard rotation studying the electronic systems in detail, identifying critical nodes and backup systems that would need to be neutralized. The security network was impressively redundant, with multiple layers of protection and automatic fail-safes designed to prevent exactly the kind of infiltration she was attempting. When the shift change began, Zara positioned herself directly above the main security control node and prepared to channel every ounce of her electromagnetic abilities into a coordinated attack on the prison's systems. This would either free her brother or kill them both, but doing nothing meant Kale would die in captivity anyway. As the guards began their handover procedures, Zara closed her eyes and reached out with her transformed mind toward the electronic heart of Tartarus Base itself. The electromagnetic pulse that erupted from Zara's enhanced nervous system was unlike anything the prison's designers had ever anticipated. Every security system in the maximum security block went dark simultaneously as her transformed abilities overloaded circuits and scrambled electronic signals throughout the facility. Emergency lighting flickered on moments later, casting the corridor in blood-red shadows. Kyle was already moving before the normal lighting failed. He had spent weeks preparing for this moment, secretly collecting metal fragments and chemical compounds from his daily meals. In the confused seconds after the systems went down, he combined these materials into a crude but effective explosive device that blasted the door off his cell. The sound of twisting metal echoed through the corridor as other prisoners realized what was happening. Shouts of excitement and desperation filled the air as dozens of the galaxy's most dangerous criminals sensed an opportunity for freedom. But their celebration was premature. Zara had only disabled the automated systems. The human guards were already responding with military precision. Through her telepathic abilities, Zara could sense the guards' thoughts as they activated emergency protocols. Blast doors were slamming shut throughout the facility, sealing off sections and preventing any mass escape. Combat teams were mobilizing from barracks located deeper in the asteroid, their minds focused on containing the security breach at any cost. Kale emerged from his destroyed cell, his tall Cathariari frame moving with the fluid grace of a trained warrior. Even after weeks of imprisonment, his physical conditioning remained impressive. His violet eyes quickly scanned the corridor, taking in the situation and identifying potential threats and escape routes. "Sister," he spoke aloud, knowing she could hear him through their mental link. "Whatever you've become, we need to move quickly. The humans will flood this section with troops within minutes." Zara dropped through the ventilation grate, landing silently beside her brother in the corridor. Kyle's amazement at seeing her transformed appearance was visible on his face. Her silvery blue skin seemed to glow in the emergency lighting, and her enhanced eyes blazed with green energy that was both beautiful and unsettling. "The transformation worked better than I hoped," she said, her voice carrying new harmonics that resonated strangely in the metal corridor. "But we're not safe yet. I can sense at least 50 guards converging on this location." Other prisoners were beginning to emerge from their cells, some having managed to break free during the system failure. A massive human cyborg designated as prisoner X-70741 smashed through his reinforced door with augmented fists, his optical implants glowing red in the dim light. Nearby, a reptilian assassin from the Vorth Collective slithered out of her cell, her natural camouflage already adapting to match the corridor walls. "We can't let them escape," Kyle said, reading Zara's thoughts as she sensed the dangerous prisoners around them. "Some of these beings are here because they're too dangerous to exist in civilized space." Zara nodded. understanding the moral complexity of their situation. Her enhanced abilities had created an opportunity for escape, but it had also potentially released dozens of killers and war criminals into the galaxy. They had a responsibility to prevent that from happening. The cyborg prisoner was advancing down the corridor, his enhanced systems apparently unaffected by Zara's electromagnetic pulse. He had spotted the two Catherians and was moving to attack, probably seeing them as competition for escape routes. His augmented strength could easily crush them both if he reached them. But Zara's transformation had granted her capabilities that no prisoner or guard in the facility possessed. She extended her electromagnetic field toward the cyborg's mechanical components, interfacing with his neural implants in ways that should have been impossible. Instead of disabling his systems, she began rewriting his base programming. The massive human stopped in his tracks as Zara's consciousness invaded his cybernetic brain. She didn't have time for subtlety, so she implanted a simple command: protect innocent life at all costs. The cyborg's red optical sensors flickered, then changed to blue as his new programming took hold. Assistance required, the cyborg announced in a mechanical voice. Hostile prisoners must be contained. Other dangerous prisoners were beginning to realize that escape wouldn't be as simple as they had hoped. The reptilian assassin hissed in frustration as she discovered that the blast doors leading out of the section were sealed and wouldn't respond to her natural acid secretions. A pair of human terrorists found their path blocked by emergency barriers that had deployed from hidden compartments in the walls. Meanwhile, the sound of approaching guards grew louder. Heavy boots echoed through adjacent corridors as combat teams moved to surround the compromised section. Through her enhanced hearing, Zara could detect the distinctive whine of energy weapons charging and the mechanical clicks of armor systems activating. "We need another way out," Kyle said, his military training automatically analyzing their tactical situation. "The main routes are sealed, and they'll have every exit covered within minutes." Zara closed her eyes and extended her consciousness throughout the facility, her enhanced perception mapping the asteroid's internal structure in 3 dimensions. The prison had been built around and through the natural cave systems of LX 7749, with some sections carved directly from solid rock. Most importantly, she could sense spaces that didn't appear on any official blueprint. "There's a forgotten mining tunnel 3 levels below us," she said, opening her eyes with excitement. "The prison was built over an old excavation site. If we can reach that tunnel, it connects to the asteroid's original surface entrance. But reaching the tunnel would require passing through multiple security checkpoints and heavily guarded areas. Even with her enhanced abilities, fighting through dozens of professional soldiers seemed impossible. They needed a different approach. The solution came from an unexpected source. Through her telepathic connection to the cyborg prisoner, Zara sensed that his cybernetic systems included detailed maps of the entire facility. His criminal career had involved studying prison layouts across human space, and his enhanced memory banks contained structural information that could help them navigate to the forgotten tunnel. "Can you access the maintenance shafts?" she asked the reprogrammed cyborg. "Affirmative," he replied, his mechanical voice emotionless. "Structural plans indicate service tunnels connecting all levels. Access point located 17 meters north of current position." The cyborg's massive fists made quick work of a maintenance panel, revealing a shaft large enough for them to crawl through. But before they could escape, they had to deal with the other prisoners who were still attempting to break free. Allowing dangerous criminals to escape would make them responsible for whatever crimes those beings committed. Zara made a difficult decision. Using her electromagnetic abilities, she began systematically interfering with the other prisoners' escape attempts. Cell doors that had been forced open suddenly slammed shut and locked again. Electronic restraints that had been disabled reactivated, securing dangerous individuals before they could flee. The reptilian assassin hissed in fury as energy bonds materialized around her limbs, but she was powerless against technology she couldn't understand. The human terrorists found themselves trapped behind barriers that had somehow become stronger than before, their explosive devices useless against reinforced materials. Within minutes, all the dangerous prisoners except Kyle were secured again, though they remained conscious and aware of their failed escape attempt. Zara felt a pang of guilt about condemning them to continued imprisonment, but she knew the alternative was potentially thousands of innocent deaths. "Impressive work, sister," Kyle said as they began crawling through the maintenance shaft. "But the guards will discover what happened soon enough. We need to reach that tunnel before they figure out our escape route." The cyborg moved ahead of them, his enhanced strength making quick work of obstacles in their path. His reprogramming had made him completely loyal to their cause, and his mechanical nature meant he felt no fear or uncertainty about their situation. Behind them, the sounds of guards discovering the security breach grew louder. Shouted orders echoed through the facility as human soldiers worked to understand what had happened. They would find the escaped prisoners still in their cells, but they would also discover the missing Cathariari and the mysteriously altered cyborg. The maintenance shaft led them through multiple levels of the facility, past areas that housed different categories of prisoners. Zara could sense the minds of countless beings confined within the asteroid, from petty criminals serving short sentences to political prisoners who might never see freedom again. Some of these individuals were truly innocent, victims of the war's paranoia and hatred. But determining who deserved freedom and who didn't was beyond her capabilities during an emergency escape. She filed away the information for later consideration, hoping that someday she might return to help those who truly didn't belong in this place. The shaft finally brought them to the lower levels of the facility, where older construction methods were evident in the rougher walls and cruder technology. This section of the prison was used primarily for storage and mechanical systems, with minimal guard presence under normal circumstances. But their escape hadn't gone unnoticed. Through her enhanced perception, Zara could sense search teams beginning to sweep through the facility's maintenance areas. The guards had quickly realized that the escapees weren't in the main corridors and had begun checking alternative routes. "We have perhaps 10 minutes before they find us," she told Kale and the cyborg as they emerged from the maintenance shaft into a storage area filled with spare equipment and supplies. The cyborg's optical sensors scanned the area, quickly identifying the entrance to the forgotten mining tunnel. It was hidden behind stacks of obsolete computer equipment, accessible only through a narrow gap between storage containers. The tunnel itself was little more than a rough hole carved through the asteroid's rock, barely wide enough for a single person to pass through. This passage was sealed during construction, the cyborg reported. However, structural integrity remains sound for approximately 2 kilometers before reaching external surface. As they prepared to enter the tunnel, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. The guards had finally discovered that prisoners were missing and had activated full emergency protocols. Blast shields were sealing every entrance and exit, while automated systems began flooding certain areas with sedative gas. But none of these measures affected the forgotten tunnel. Within minutes, Zara, Kale, and their unexpected cyborg ally were crawling through the rough passage, moving steadily toward freedom. The tunnel was dark and claustrophobic, carved through solid rock by mining equipment decades before the prison was built. The journey through the tunnel took nearly an hour, with several sections requiring them to squeeze through gaps barely large enough for their bodies. The cyborg's mechanical components occasionally sparked against the rock walls, but his systems remained functional throughout the difficult passage. Finally, they emerged onto the asteroid's original surface in an area far from the prison's main structures. Ancient mining equipment stood abandoned around them, corroded by decades of exposure to vacuum but still recognizable as the tools used to first excavate LX-7749. Zara's hidden scout ship was only a short distance away, concealed among the debris field where she had left it. Using her enhanced abilities to navigate the treacherous terrain, she led them across the asteroid's surface toward their escape vessel. But as they approached the ship, Zara's telepathic senses detected something unexpected. Human minds were nearby, focused and alert, with the intensity of professional soldiers. A search team had somehow anticipated their escape route and was waiting in ambush. The trap was well planned, with soldiers positioned to cover all approaches to the scout ship. Energy weapons were trained on the vessel, ready to disable it before the escapees could board. But the humans hadn't anticipated the enhanced abilities of their quarry. "Surrender immediately!" a voice called out through external speakers. The tone, professional but uncompromising. "You are surrounded by superior forces with orders to use lethal force if necessary." Kale's hand moved toward a weapon he had taken from the prison, but Zara stopped him with a gentle touch. Violence wasn't the answer here. Instead, she extended her consciousness toward the minds of the ambushing soldiers, reading their thoughts and intentions. What she discovered changed everything. These weren't just prison guards following orders. They were members of an elite human unit that had been studying Catheriari biology and technology. More importantly, their commanding officer was someone who had been secretly working toward ending the war between their species. Colonel Sarah Chen stepped out from behind cover, her weapon lowered but ready. Her mind was complex, filled with military discipline, but also genuine desire for peace between humans and Catherians. She had volunteered for this assignment specifically because she hoped to make contact with moderate voices on both sides of the conflict. "Dr. Zara Velthanis," Colonel Chen said, surprising them by knowing her name and title. "We've been monitoring your research for some time. Your work on cross-species biological compatibility has caught the attention of people who share your goals." Zara stepped forward, her enhanced senses reading the colonel's thoughts and finding only truth there. "You want to end the war." "More than that," Chen replied. "We want to prove that cooperation between our species is possible. Your transformation represents something unprecedented in the history of both our peoples. You've become living proof that our differences can be strengths rather than sources of conflict." The colonel's team remained in position but didn't seem hostile. Their thoughts revealed that they were under orders to capture the escapees alive if possible. But more importantly, they had been instructed to listen to anything the transformed Catheriari might have to say. "There are people on both sides who believe this war has gone too far," Chen continued. "Scientists, diplomats, and even some military leaders who think we're destroying both our species for no good reason. Your brother's rescue has given us an opportunity to make contact with someone who might be able to help change things." Kyle stepped up beside his sister, his military bearing evident even in their desperate circumstances. "What are you proposing?" "Safe passage to neutral space," the colonel replied. "In exchange for Dr. Velthanis agreeing to share her research with a joint human Catheriari scientific committee. There are people ready to begin peace talks, but they need proof that cooperation is possible." Zara considered the offer carefully, reading the thoughts of everyone present to ensure there was no deception. What she found was hope, not just from Colonel Chen, but from soldiers on both sides who were tired of killing and dying for a war that no one seemed able to win. Her transformation had been intended to save her brother, but perhaps it could accomplish something far greater. The human military serum had created a bridge between two species that had been at war for years. She had become living proof that their differences could be overcome. "I accept your terms," she said finally, "but I want guarantees that my brother will be free to make his own choices about his future." "Already arranged," Chen replied with a slight smile. "Though I suspect he'll want to be involved in whatever comes next." As they prepared to board the human transport vessel that Chen's team had waiting nearby, Zara looked back at Tartarus Base one last time. The prison facility was still on high alert, searchlights sweeping the asteroid's surface as guards tried to locate the escaped prisoners. She thought about the other beings still confined there, some guilty of terrible crimes, but others who might be innocent victims of the war's madness. Perhaps when peace came, there would be opportunities to review their cases and correct any injustices. But for now, she had a different mission. Her transformation had given her abilities that neither species possessed alone, making her uniquely qualified to help bridge the gap between humans and Catherians. The war had taken too many lives already. It was time to prove that cooperation was not only possible, but inevitable. The human transport ship rose silently from the asteroid's surface, carrying its unusual passengers toward a future that none of them could fully predict. Behind them, the prison facility grew smaller until it was just another point of light among the stars. Zara Velthanis, no longer fully Ketheriari but not quite human either, had become something new, and perhaps that transformation would be exactly what both species needed to finally find peace among the stars. The war that had defined their relationship was about to become something entirely different. Thanks to an alien girl who had been brave enough to drink a human military serum and discover that their greatest differences could become their greatest strengths.